actually considered rude or offensive to toot at people unless it's necessary. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm gonna talk about the top things that you need to know when visiting New Zealand. So this would include what the culture here is like and why it's important, some social etiquettes that you definitely need to know and follow, the do's and don'ts of visiting this country, and information about getting around New Zealand and what you need to do when you first get here. So let's get started. So first, you should probably know the basics about New Zealand. So it's a country of 5 million people with a very diverse culture. Now, there are two main islands in New Zealand, so the North and the South Island. And the north is usually warmer and the south is usually colder. So the popular cities in North Island includes Wellington, which is the capital of New Zealand. We've got Auckland, which is the largest city in New Zealand, which I believe has over 1 million people. We've also got Hamilton, where I live, Taupo, Rotorua, and Coromandel, with very nice beaches. And in the South Island, so I haven't actually traveled in the South Island that much, but I have been to Christchurch and Dunedin, so those are one of the main cities. And we've also got Queenstown, which is a very popular tourist spot. Now, some information about getting around New Zealand when you first get here and things that you need to know. So first of all, the currency is of course New Zealand dollar. Now, most places do have EFTPOS machines, so most places accept credit or debit cards. However, it's still recommended to bring some cash with you just in case. Now, if you're wondering about transport here in New Zealand, we do have a public transport. They're mostly buses and trains. Now, personally, and this is just my opinion, I think the public transport is not very good. It does depend on some places. In most places here in New Zealand, you need a car to get by. But if you're just traveling in New Zealand for a few weeks or a month, it's very common to rent a car or to hire a camper van. There are a lot of companies that offer that, but it's definitely recommended to book in advance, especially during the busy season, especially for example summer, because they do book out. So definitely book far out in advance to make sure that you get one. Now, for accommodation, of course we have hotels and motels. However, I would probably recommend trying out Airbnb. It's quite a popular accommodation option here in New Zealand, and you could find very cheap ones or even very unique ones to stay. If you really want to save money, then I would recommend going to backpackers. Now, if you do want to go camping, most popular spots would be dock sites. So dock stands for Department of Conservation, so they are kind of dock-owned sites. Usually there is a fee for camping, but it's not too much. The last time we camped in Coromandel, it cost us $15 per person, so $30 for one night. I do recommend camping on dock sites because they do have good facilities there. There are also over 200 dock campsites all over New Zealand, so basically most places you go to, you should be able to find a camping spot. Now, if you do want to go freedom camping in New Zealand, that is allowed, but there are specific rules, and New Zealand is quite strict on that. So I would put a link in this description below that outlines specific rules for freedom camping. Let's talk about SIM cards. So when you get here, I would definitely recommend that you buy a New Zealand SIM card, and they typically cost around $5. And there's many carrier options. So personally, I use Spark, but there are other options like Vodafone, 2 Degrees, Skinny, even the Warehouse has one. You can buy them at most airports when you land here, or you could also buy them in shopping malls. Now, if you're staying in New Zealand for a few weeks or a few months, I would recommend getting a value pack. So for example, what I do is I pay $20 per month through Spark for a value pack, and that includes 1.25 gigabytes of data for internet, also has unlimited text, 200 minutes of calls, and it even gives me 50% off Spotify Premium. And I think that's a very good idea, just to make sure that you have internet and you could call someone or text someone in case of emergencies. And to buy the plan, you just need to go to the carrier's website and buy it from there with either your credit or debit card. Now, for electrical outlets, New Zealand uses a Type I plug, which is the same as the ones in Australia. And what they look like is they have 3 flat pins. There's also some chargers only have 2 with only the V's on top. So if you don't have this, then I recommend getting a power adapter, and you can buy them at airports, or you could bring one from where you came from. Now, if you want to know detailed information about the cost of living here in New Zealand, if you're planning to stay here for longer, longer, I actually made a dedicated video just for this. So I'm not gonna talk about cost of living in this video. I'm gonna put the video right here in this link, or I'll put it down in the description below as well. Now let's talk about the different social etiquettes here in New Zealand and the definite do's and don'ts when staying here. So first, when I actually first moved to New Zealand, this is one of the things that quite surprised me. So New Zealanders are actually known to be really friendly people, and it's quite common for people here to say hi or hello when you're walking past them. So for example, when you're walking in the park, you would mostly see that people will either greet you with a smile or say hi, good afternoon, or just greet you in general. So definitely don't be afraid to say hi or smile when walking past people. Now the next thing I'm gonna talk about is punctuality. So definitely do be polite and on time when you're meeting with someone or if you have meetings or appointments. Now another thing that a lot of people actually ask about is whether you need to tip in New Zealand or not. So tipping is actually not expected in New Zealand. You're more than welcome to tip if you want to, but it's not very common here, and there's no, I guess, social obligation to do so. Now when someone visits you, it's quite common and polite thing to do to offer someone a drink, so either a tea or coffee. So I definitely recommend doing so when you have visitors, especially Kiwi visitors, and also when you do visit someone, and then you can also expect that they'll be offering you a drink. No, I'm recording! Now, when it comes to social gatherings, you might also commonly hear the term bring a plate. So this doesn't mean bringing an actual plate. It actually means it's kind of like potluck, where you bring food to share for everyone. If you're not too sure of what food to share, it's common to share food from your own culture, or alternatively, you can never go wrong with bringing a salad, some snacks, or if it's a barbecue, you could bring some meat for the barbecue. Another important thing to know, and this is probably one of the most important as well, is to respect nature. So don't litter and make sure that you clean up after yourself pretty much everywhere you go. So New Zealanders take great pride in the natural environment, so it's very important to just be conscious of this when you're traveling. And I think one of the most important one as well is, and I've read this quite often online, sometimes when tourists get here, some of them would poo or pee in the bushes. So this is actually a no-no here in New Zealand. So if you can see a toilet, a public toilet, then go there. This also applies when you're freedom camping or when you're by the beaches. Don't pee or poo nearby. Go to a proper toilet and release what you need to release over there. So the last thing that you want to be is to be the tourist who comes to New Zealand and disrespects or doesn't follow the rules. So you're gonna get a lot of hate. And the next thing is some driving etiquettes that you need to know and follow. So when I first came here, it was also very new and different to me to see the driving etiquette here in New Zealand. So because it's not a very populated country, people actually follow the rules here. And the most important rule to follow is actually to give way. You need to give way, especially when there's give way signs. And this also includes pedestrians. In New Zealand, when you see the orange circle, that means it's a pedestrian crossing, and that means that you need to give way to crossing pedestrians. So when you're driving here, I guess just be nice and give way and follow the rules properly. So in New Zealand, you also drive on the left, which means the steering wheel is on the right. So just be aware of that. Now, one important don't when driving in New Zealand is don't toot at people. It's actually considered rude or offensive to toot at people unless it's necessary. So the necessary parts are, for example, when you're in a stoplight and it's been 5 seconds and the person hasn't gone because they're busy on their phone, then it's okay. You're just trying to get their attention. Or if someone's backing out and they're almost gonna hit you, they might hit your car, then toot at them. But if you're just driving, I guess in traffic, there's no need to toot. No one does that. If you do that, it's quite offensive. So don't do it unless it's necessary. Also in New Zealand, one of the rules most commonly in highways is that when it's a 2-lane road, you stay on the left unless you want to pass someone. So don't drive on the right side and be very slow. So people kind of get annoyed at that. So if you're driving on the right, typically means you're passing someone and then you go back on the left, if that makes sense. So do follow the rule, stay left unless you're passing. Now, the next thing that you need to know, and this is quite important, is the Maori culture here in New Zealand. Now, you might be familiar with the term New Zealanders or Kiwis, but it's also important to know about Maoris and their culture. So, Maoris are the indigenous people of New Zealand, and according to the latest statistics, as of June 2022, there's an estimated Maori population of 892,200 people. So, that's about 17% of the overall New Zealand population. So the Maori culture holds very significant meaning to New Zealand, and the Maori language called Reo Māori is one of New Zealand's official languages. Now, when you get to New Zealand, it's important to know to at least know some of the common Maori terms. So the most common one is kia ora, which means hello, kia ora koutou, which means hello to you all, so that's when you're greeting two or more people. Haere mai, which means welcome. So you'll see this when you're going into a town. It would usually say haere mai. Other words include kai, which means food, whānau for family, aroha means love, and when you're saying goodbye to someone, you could say ka kite, which means see you later. Now, to introduce yourself in Maori, you would say ko, insert your name, and then toko ingoa. So if I'm introducing myself, I would be saying ko Julia toko ingoa. Now, of course, there are many more phrases that you could learn, but I think you should at least know how to introduce yourself and greet someone in Te Reo Māori. Now, one thing that you might see commonly about the Maori culture here in New Zealand is how they greet. The traditional Maori greeting is called hongi, and this means sharing of bread. And how it works is two people pressing their noses together and shaking hands. So you would usually see this in events such as a poferi, which is a Maori welcoming ceremony. So it's very important to respect the customs and traditions of the Maori culture. And some values that are important for the Maori culture includes family, so that's very important, and also respecting the land and nature. So for the Maori culture, they have a spiritual connection with the land. So again, when you're visiting New Zealand, make sure to be aware and familiar of the Maori culture and the customs and traditions here. Now, the last thing that I'm gonna talk about that you need to know when you're visiting New Zealand is, of course, some common New Zealand terms. So I do have a list here, and I'm gonna try to see if I could put it up on the screen. But some of the terms that you probably need to know is, of course, first, Kiwi stands for New Zealanders, but it also stands for the native bird here in New Zealand. It's a Kiwi bird. Another thing that I kind of found interesting when I first moved here is that McDonald's. So in the Philippines, we shorten it for McDo, but in New Zealand, it's actually called Macas. You would also commonly hear people say the word a at the end of their sentences. For example, it's cold here, eh? Or, for example, the weather's looking bad, eh? It's kind of like, for me, how I translate a, it closely translates to right, like, oh, it's cold here, right? So that's my best explanation of a. Now, depending on where you're from, you might already know this term, but I wasn't familiar with it when I first got here. So chips actually means here in New Zealand means fries, because I was used to calling it fries. When I think of chips, I think of potato chips, but chips actually also stands for fries here. So you might hear fish and chips, which is just fish, and fries, which is a common takeaway food here in New Zealand. Now, other phrases that you might hear that New Zealanders say would be sweet as, kind of to just agree with someone, or sweet as. We've also got chur, C-H-U-R, which means thanks. Or you might hear people say chur bro, which means thanks bro. Jandals means flip-flops or slippers. You've also got togs, which means swimsuit. Also here, when people say you're welcome, you might commonly say no worries, so means you're welcome, no problem. Or all good, which means that's okay, or never mind. And if you're from the Philippines, this is very, very important, because this was one of my first mistakes when I got here in New Zealand. In the Philippines, when we refer to a toilet or bathroom, we say CR, which stands for comfort room. And when I first got here also, I tried to ask someone where the CR was, and they didn't know what I was talking about. So just say toilets. Where's the toilet, or where's the bathroom? So that was all for today. I really hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you do, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. See ya!